I guess we best start with the biggest story of the week, which has all come from something we probably shouldn't have seen yesterday. Just by pure happenstance, the Sky cameras having to be on hand to catch the opening few overs of Manchester United training, and the reception that Paul Pogba received from his manager and vice versa, which has gone viral, has been viewed millions and millions of times in different versions of videos all around the world. The body language experts have been out, the subtitlers have been out, the lip readers have been out to decipher what was said between the two. But I guess most crucially, most importantly, what we're seeing is a new low, a new nadir to the pair's relationship. I mean, this thing isn't going to get any better anytime soon.
Well, it goes back a good while, you see, Richie. It didn't happen just at the weekend. It went back to last year when Mourinho took him off against Spurs and actually humiliated him publicly for a few weeks. Then you go to the World Cup where Pogba had a very, very good World Cup. Not as good as... I didn't think it was as good as people said it, but anyway, he proved to play much better there than he did for Manchester United. Then it's back to Manchester United. Now, obviously, Mourinho has a job on his hands because people are saying, why can't you get the best out of him like the French manager did and all that, carry on. And I think at that stage, Mourinho blinked in the war of power between them. He blinked, he made him captain. Right? I don't think Mourinho would ever believe that Pogba would. But in other words, we're going to make up. I don't think he'll make up with Pogba. Pogba is a big head about himself. And as he said in a team talk, you're good, but you're not as good as you think you are.
Yeah.
And Jamie Redknapp said it again last night, and I think that's absolutely right. So now you come to this particular season, and he plays one or two matches okay, one or two not so good. And then at the match of the weekend, I think Mourinho gave him a right telling off after the Wolves match because he didn't pick up a player. And then he came out, Pogba, knowing exactly what he's doing, to have a go at Mourinho. And just to go back on it, I said, Pogba says, when we got at home, we should attack. I think attack. Teams are scared when we attack. We weren't able to attack anyway. And then he says, asked why the team was not attractive. I cannot tell because I am a player. It's not for me. So he's had a right go at the manager. And then he's saying afterwards, well, it's not for me to say it. That's really, really a bad attack on a manager, to say we should be attacking and we aren't. It's not up to me, that's up to the manager. In other words, he's playing. That's totally Mourinho's fault, because Mourinho had it gone. This is a battle that's been going on for a while, Richie, and I can't see it lasting. Somebody's going to have to make a decision. What's the chairman?
Ed Woodward's
Ed Woodward. Now, I think Mourinho's in a bad place because he's already fallen out with Woodward for not getting the players that he thought he should be getting, and he's already fallen out with Pogba. I can't see that. I can't see them getting back together on that.
On that scenario, we've basically got a player who clearly isn't interested necessarily in playing for the manager, a manager who's not necessarily interested in trying to make amends with him, and both of them are, well, Mourinho's, you could probably side with Mourinho on this one to say, well, if the guy's not pulling his weight, then clearly he needs to be brought back into shape. On the other side of that, we've got Jose Mourinho and a Manchester United that aren't performing at the level that a lot of fans and possibly the board feel that they should do. Now, we were outlining a situation on the show over the last couple of nights whereby it's very, very much conceivable that neither Pogba nor Mourinho will actually be at the club next year. Yeah. So what United are left with now is a mess of trying to figure out which one is going to last longest or last least, because they have to get to January.
Well, there's a thing in football, Richie, first of all. The manager has to be in charge.
Yeah.
Right. You cannot have a player in charge of the situation. And I can understand, I'd be on Mourinho's side in this particular disagreement, if that's what we call it. The manager has to be in charge. There's no doubt about that. I've never seen a successful team where one player who is causing a lot of trouble is going to be the most important player. Manager has to be in charge of a group of players, and that's what Mourinho's done. And to be fair to Mourinho, in all the clubs he's been, apart from one or two he fell down in eventually, he's been in charge of that situation. I admire him as a manager. The buying and selling of players, he's been in charge of that. He's picked the team. He's dominated players. He's never let a player get in charge. Happened at Real Madrid and it went to pieces. But he has tried to do that. And traditionally, in my experience in football, the manager has to be in charge. If one player becomes more dominant than the manager, you're in big trouble. Big trouble. Because the players have to follow the manager. If you get a player that's the dominant figure, and all players have ideas of what should happen on the pitch, right? So it's only the manager. And I played with Don Revie, and Don Revie did certain things I didn't agree with, but he was the manager. So I go along with it, and he was a great manager.
What was the exchange of ideas like in the training pitch there? Or was there any?
There wasn't any training on the training pitch. There was when we lost a match or two, Don would have a crisis meeting. Everybody come in. Okay, you're all going to have to say what you have to say. Get it out here in the privacy of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Well, you get players like Norman and say, "Well, Jack, I think you're going too far back," or Norman say, "Me and Billy Bremner are not doing this and that and the other," and that they get that off their chest, as it were. Then it comes back to the manager, right? The manager say, "Okay, now you've all had your say." Like in the case of Big Jack, for example. Big Jack was a big centre-half, as we all know, right? There's lots of times Jack wasn't tracking the centre-forward down. Norman the first to say, "No, Jack, you're not tracking. No, don't agree with that." Billy Bremner, "Jack, you're not tracking his chance." And he's turning on the ball, and me and the wee man can't get a bite at him. You've got to do that, right? And in the end, because Jack was never wrong. He was always right. He was never wrong.
Go away, really, yeah.
Oh, never. That we had a saying for him. Jack wasn't always right, but he was never wrong. So anyway, now it comes out, and Don Revie says, "Okay, lads, now you've all had your say. Jack, when the centre forward goes deep, I want you to track him down."
Yeah.
When Jack is drinking a cup of tea, bangs the saucer, breaks the saucer, he says, "Right, I'll do it because you tell me to do it, but you're all effing wrong." So unless Don was what I'm saying there is, if Don wasn't a good manager and a strong manager, Jack would have ruled the roost, right? And other players would say, "Well, if Jack is doing it, I'll do it," right? So there you need a manager to say, "Okay, Jack, well, next time the centre forward, I want you to go deep. Don't care what you think. That's what you do." Not just that. I'm only giving an example. There was other players thought certain things, right? But the manager did, because all players are different. You know, goalkeeper would have 20 players in the wall. Centre half would have nobody going forward. All that, where the manager has to come in and say, "Right, that's what you do." And I've played in teams. A lot of managers didn't agree. I don't agree with what the manager's doing, but he's the manager.
Yeah.
And my take on actually when I played, well, Don Reevy's the manager. I don't agree with everything he's doing. That's not my place. If I become a manager, I'll do what I want to do, but not until then. You have to go along with it. In this case, you see what's happening, going back to Old Trafford. You've got a player now, and he's very, very clever in the way he does it, Pogba. Very clever. You know, he makes his statements here and he makes his statements there. And I think I watched Carragher last night, very, very good on the television, where he was making the things that people said. You've got to get the best out of him. And Carragher was very good. You get the best out of yourself. You know, you've got to go out and do your stuff. And if it's not good enough, the manager but you can't wait for the manager to get the best out of you. You know what I mean? That's what you do. And then he said, and he should be free to do something. And Carragher said, "Free to do what? When you're on the football pitch, you're not free to do things. You have to do things in the benefit of the team." So this is all nonsense surrounding Pogba. You know, Deschamps got the best out of him. Okay. Well, whatever he did, he played, I think it was in his own interest to do so.
Is it not the case that Deschamps didn't necessarily get the best out of him, but Deschamps at least tried to eradicate the worst of him for the spell of a month?
We don't know what he did, but you can't eradicate the worst. When you go on the pitch,
or lessen its influence, because he's somebody who gets lost in his own head and decides to play the game on his own.
Well, whatever way he did, you see what Mourinho said afterwards, which was quite right. You want to ask Pogba himself why he played so well. Right, now that went down as he didn't give him enough credit for what he played, but he was absolutely right what he said. It was him that played. It was him that played in a professional way in the semi-final, particularly in the final of the World Cup, right? And what Mourinho is actually saying, why can't he do that for Manchester United? I don't have to tell him. Just go out and do it. Nobody's stopping him from doing it. But he goes out and he plays, he gets tricky, he gives the ball away, he does all. Actually, he doesn't play in a professional way at all. So I can understand Mourinho going mad. I think he handled it badly last year, but I can understand as a manager, how am I going to get the best out of him if he's not looking to get the best out of himself?
On the Mourinho-Pogba relationship, it deteriorated further this week. You mentioned the comments that he made, Pogba, after the Wolves draw. Yes. What followed on from there was before their League Cup tie on Tuesday night at home to Derby. Mourinho apparently spoke to Pogba and the squad, telling Pogba that he won't be vice-captain anymore.
Yeah.
Pogba wasn't involved in the match. He was up in the stands with a couple of his mates and a couple of the members of the squad that weren't as involved either. And he was posting videos on social media and having a laugh and a joke. And apparently it's that with which Mourinho took exception at training yesterday morning and decided to punish him.
I think that was the final straw. What he was really punishing him about was, you see, I think he was making up to him at the start of the season by making him captain. I think it was probably the worst thing he could have done, because at that stage Pogba was saying, "I'm in front now. I'm in the power position here." Right? And what happened in the other day, Mourinho told him after the Wolves match that he wasn't doing his stuff, that the player, and he gave him a right telling off, right? Then he responded by saying we got to attack, and then Mourinho responded again by taking the captaincy from him. So what Mourinho, it's a power battle between them. What Mourinho's trying to do now is to say, he's not going to be captain anymore. I told the players not going to be captain. So I'm back in charge here.
Setting aside Pogba for a second, if it was to be Mourinho who ultimately goes first at Manchester United, what does that say to the remaining squad and to the next incoming manager about how things are run there?
Well, it's not going to be good. What they're going to say is Pogba's won the battle. He is the more influential than the manager was. Now, a new manager comes in, and I think Pogba will behave in the same way. I think that's the way he is. I think he has a head about himself that's just unbelievable.
No matter where he goes, he's going to be the same.
Yeah, he's going to be the same. So now, when a new manager comes in, he's going to have the same problems as Mourinho. How do I get on top of this guy? They're talking about Zidane coming in, for example, right? Zidane was one of the great players, as we know. He comes in. He's got the same problem as Pogba. I don't think Pogba has any respect for anybody.
Quickest solution is to sell him then.
Well, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was in Manchester United's position, there's no player, there's no saying in football, no player should be ever bigger than the club. Ever. No matter who they are. You know, if you got, when Ronaldo, who's got a head about himself as well, under Ferguson, there's no way he could misbehave under Ferguson. Nobody could misbehave under Ferguson. They were gone. And all the great managers do the same. You can't have a player dominating the situation in the way that Pogba is trying to do and is actually succeeding at the moment. So somebody has to go. And where Mourinho's in trouble is that he's already fallen out with Woodward because he's criticised Woodward publicly about not getting the players in that he wants. So, you know, Mourinho doesn't behave himself right all the time either. I mean, what he did with Pogba last year was wrong. He publicly humiliated him, took him off against Spurs, he dropped him, he left him in, he dropped him out. So what he was thinking, said, well, this is what I've got to do with this guy. But this guy is exceptional in terms of being able to play the public, go to the World Cup and have a good World Cup, then come back to Old Trafford, and Mourinho's in a difficult place and he's making the most of it. So it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. It could get to the stage where the two of them go. But if I was putting my money on anybody going now, unless he really makes up with Woodward, Mourinho, because he's had a go at me, so he's made two enemies in this trio of power. Like Mourinho's the manager, Pogba's the player, and Woodward is the. Now he's fallen out with Woodward and he's fallen out with Pogba.
It's essentially in a Mexican standoff, standing like this with two guns in his hand, and they're pointing back at him as well.
They're pointing back at him. That's the way I would read it, Richie. And it's very, very serious from the club's point of view, from everybody's point of view, because, like, if Mourinho is true to himself at the weekend, or even for the next few weeks, he's not going to play Pogba.
Yeah.